So the JBL Boombox 3 is a very portable Bluetooth speaker that gets impressively loud, and it has a decent amount of bass thanks to its new speaker setup. However, if you're looking for a Bluetooth speaker to constantly take on the go with you, the Boombox 3 is a little on the larger side, especially when compared to its smaller siblings, the JBL Xtreme 3 and the JBL Partybox Encore. So today, we're going to see how the Boombox 3 stacks up to both the Xtreme 3 and Partybox Encore. And we're going to see which was right for you, because all of these speakers have their own pros and cons. Regarding pricing, the Encore is the most affordable speaker here, retailing for $300. Then there's the Xtreme 3, which retails for $380, but likes to routinely go on sale. And finally, there's the Boombox 3, which has a retail price of $500. Overall, I like and recommend all of these speakers, but they all have their own unique cases. Nonetheless, if you want to pick any of these speakers up, they'll be linked down below, or you can always press on the YouTube shopping button. Just give it a try. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch shelf down below. I've made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And if you've been watching me for a while, you know I can be very particular. So I'll only set my name on something that I'm really proud of. Now first, let's talk about the design of these speakers. The Xtreme 3 is the smallest speaker here and is also the lightest, weighing in at 4.3 pounds. So this is the easiest speaker to take on the go with you. Plus, it also has a built-in shoulder strap, which makes transporting the speaker a breeze. And the shoulder strap also has a built-in bottle opener, which is a very nice touch. But then there's the Encore. This speaker is still relatively small and lightweight, coming in at 13 pounds. And thanks to its built-in carrying handle, it's also easy to transport. However, this speaker just isn't as convenient to carry around as the Xtreme 3. But I will say that the Encore is noticeably easier to carry around than the Boombox 3, just because of its overall shape and volume. But finally, there's the Boombox 3. Now, even though this speaker is still relatively easy enough to take on the go with you, it is a bit more of a hassle when compared to these other two speakers. First off, the Boombox 3 is the heaviest speaker here, weighing in at 14.7 pounds. And after a while, carrying the speaker around can get a little uncomfortable. I still wish the Boombox 3 had a shoulder strap like the Xtreme 3. But one thing that I do have to point out about the cylindrical shape of the Boombox 3, if you throw it into the trunk of your car, you're going to have to secure it somehow, because if not, it's just going to roll around in your trunk. And the same thing goes for the Xtreme 3. Whereas with the Encore, that isn't an issue. However, the Encore simply just isn't as rugged as these other two speakers. For starters, the Encore has a mostly plastic body, which simply loves to collect scratches. Whereas these other two speakers are more durable thanks to their mostly fabric wrapped bodies, which do a much better job of standing up to constant abuse from bumps and scrapes. And also, both the Boombox 3 and Xtreme 3 are rocking IP67 ratings, meaning that they're both water and dust resistant. Now, the Encore is also water resistant because it's rocking an IPX4 rating. But this speaker can't stand up to as much water abuse as these other two speakers. Basically, with the Encore, if it gets rained on a little bit or if a drink gets spilled on it, it'll be fine. But with the Boombox 3 and Xtreme 3, you can drop them in a pool and they'll be perfectly okay. So if you need something more rugged, you are better off with either the Boombox 3 or Xtreme 3. But something the Encore does have over these other two speakers is its light feature. And in general, JBL does light features very well. This light feature is very bright and it's very dynamic, and you even have a few different lighting modes to choose from. Just keep in mind, if you do decide to use this light feature, it is going to take its toll on the battery life. Because when it comes to battery life, this is one area where the Encore just can't keep up with these other two speakers. Now, the Partybox Encore has an advertised battery life of 6 hours, but that's with this speaker playing at 65% volume, with its light feature turned off and with its bass boost feature turned off as well. And overall, I will say that 65% volume is a really good listening volume on the speaker, especially for outdoor use. And I would actually argue that it's a little too loud for indoor use. But real-world use, while I use this speaker while I'm working out, at 50% volume with the light feature turned on and with the bass boost feature set to punchy, which is the second level of bass boost, the Encore is good for about 5 hours of playback time. Which is okay, but the speaker certainly doesn't have a lot of stamina to it. However, if you were to use the speaker at a lower volume, or with the light feature turned off, or with the bass boost feature turned off, any of these is going to help extend the life of your battery. But overall, if you do plan on taking the Encore on the go with you, you do want to remember to pack your charging cable, and you want to make sure that there's an outlet around. But then there's the Xtreme 3. Now, this speaker has an advertised battery life of 15 hours, but that's with this speaker playing at 50% volume, and 50% volume on the Xtreme 3 is decent for indoor use. But real-world use with the Xtreme 3 playing at 80% volume is good for about 9 hours of playback time. And then there's the Boombox 3. Now, this speaker has an advertised battery life of 24 hours, but again, that's with this speaker playing at 50% volume, which is already a really good listening volume. But real-world use with the Boombox 3 playing at 80% volume is good for about 8 hours of playback time, which is rather impressive just given the amount of transducers the speaker has to drive. But overall, if you're looking for a speaker to constantly take on the go with you, and if you're not going to have easy access to an outlet, then you're either going to want to go with the Xtreme 3 or the Boombox 3. However, something that I do want to point out about these speakers is that both the Boombox 3 and Encore charge via an AC port. There's no external power brick that you have to worry about, and personally I do find this to be rather convenient. Whereas with the Xtreme 3, the speaker charges via a USB-C port. Now, you can either use the Xtreme 3's included charging cable, or you can use your own. And again, I do feel that charging the Xtreme 3 is rather convenient. Now, when it comes to Bluetooth connectivity, all of these speakers can be connected to 2 devices at the same time, so you and a friend can both be DJ. They're all only using SBC, which is standard for JBL. But when it comes to overall performance, all of these speakers have 0 latency across the board when watching movies or videos on your phone, whether you're using an iPhone or an Android device. But if you want to, you can always just use a wired connection with any of these speakers, because all of these speakers still have a 3.5mm audio jack. However, the really cool thing about the Xtreme 3 here is that with the Xtreme 3, you can use its USB-C port as a wired connection as well. And you can also use it to charge your own devices. Whereas this is something that these other 2 speakers simply just don't have, and I really wish that they did. Now, all of these speakers still have a USB-A port, so you can charge your own devices through there, but with the Encore, you can also plug in a USB stick and play music off of it if you really want to. But personally, I still really wish that both the Boombox 3 and Encore had USB-C ports, so you can use it as a wired connection and use these same USB-C ports to charge your own devices, because most phones these days just come included with USB-C cables instead. But something that the Encore does have over these other 2 speakers is that it does have a 1/4-inch input. So you can either plug in a guitar or a microphone. And this is a good feature either for karaoke or for hosting events. The only thing you do want to keep in mind here is that the Encore only has 1 1/4-inch input versus the larger party boxes, which usually have 2 inputs. But now let's talk about actually listening to music with these speakers. Regarding speaker setups, all of these speakers are different. Now, the Xtreme 3 has dual 2 and 3/4-inch front-mount firing woofers, dual 3/4-inch front-mount firing tweeters, and dual pass radiators that shoot out the sides. Now, with the Boombox 3, it also has dual front-mount firing woofers, and they're a little bigger, coming in at 3.2 inches. But the Boombox 3 also has dual 3/4-inch front-mount firing tweeters, but these tweeters are stacked above the woofers. Now, don't be alarmed, the Boombox 3 doesn't sound muffled, but JBL did this so that they can squeeze in a new front-mount firing subwoofer, which will complement the dual pass radiators that shoot out the sides. And finally, there's the Encore. Now, the Encore has a single 5 and 1/4-inch front-mount firing woofer, which has a rear-firing exhaust port, and it also has dual front-mount firing 1 and 3/4-inch tweeters. Now, plainly said, all of these speakers sound and perform very differently, but we're going to jump into a sound test. Now, all of these speakers are playing with their stock EQs. However, the Xtreme 3 is playing at max volume so that it has a chance of keeping up. The Encore is playing at 87% volume with its bass set to deep, and the Boombox 3 is playing at 75% volume.
Don't play with my heart, just let me go. Please let me go. You like to love so hard and then you throw it away. You like to open skies and then you blame it on me. You're someone I can never be with. You joke about my flaws and weaknesses. Why'd you love so hard and then just throw it away? You opened up and just to close it on me. Don't blame it on me. So don't you blame it on me. You never knew how bad it was. Yes, you never really cared because you said your parents never gave you hugs, and as a child you were never loved. You made me love so hard, but then you threw it away. You like to open skies and then you blame it on me. You're someone I can never be with. You joke about my flaws and weaknesses. Why'd you love so hard and then just throw it away? You opened up and just to close it on me. Don't blame it on me. Open skies. You open up skies and then you blame it on me. Someone I can never be. You joke about my flaws. You're so dumb. Don't blame it on me. Don't blame it on me.
So first, let's address the Xtreme 3. Obviously, since the speaker is significantly smaller than these other two speakers, it's not going to get as loud or have as much bass as these other two speakers. And in general, for it to keep up, it was playing at max volume. And at max volume, the Xtreme 3 sounds very bright and nasally. And in general, JBL's newer speakers have all been coming included with this brighter stock EQ. But thankfully, all of these speakers have an adjustable EQ, a rather new concept for JBL speakers. And definitely, with both the Boombox 3 and Xtreme 3, I feel that if you want to get the best sound out of them, you have to go in and raise their bass by 2 clicks and lower their treble by 1 click. Now, you can also adjust the EQ on the Encore, but personally, I enjoy using this speaker with its stock EQ and with its bass set to deep. But from an overall performance standpoint, I do feel that the Boombox 3 has the best instrument separation here. With the Encore, the mids and highs can get a little jumbled up because its tweeters are working a little harder than the tweeters found on these other two speakers. However, the Partybox Encore still has more physicality in its bass than the Boombox 3. And you can always increase the bass on the speaker, either by adjusting its EQ or by switching its bass over to punchy. But nonetheless, the Boombox 3 still has an impressive amount of bass. Now, when it comes to max volume performance, the Boombox 3 does get noticeably louder than the Encore, and the Xtreme 3 is still a little shy of the Encore. But with all of these speakers, if you were to use them while they're plugged in, you are going to get a noticeable performance boost out of them. They're all going to get louder and they're all going to have more bass. However, even while it's plugged in, the Encore still doesn't manage to get as loud as the Boombox 3. So overall, sound quality wise, the Boombox 3 is the best sounding and best performing speaker here. Obviously, it is going to get louder and have more bass than the Xtreme 3 simply because it is larger. But when compared to the Encore, the Boombox 3 also has better instrument separation because it can separate its mids and highs to its mid-size woofers and tweeters, whereas with the Encore, its mids and highs aren't as detailed because its tweeters are working overtime here. However, where the Encore still shines here is when it comes to bass. If you're looking for a speaker and if you want to physically feel your bass a lot more, then you'll want to go with the Encore over the Boombox 3. But now let's talk about pairing these speakers up with other speakers. Now both the Boombox 3 and Xtreme 3 are using JBL's Party Boost, meaning that you can pair them up to other Party Boost speakers, like either another Boombox 3 or to a Boombox 2, an Xtreme 3, a Charge 5, a Pulse 4, or to a Flip 5, or to a Flip 6. And you'll also be able to pair them up to the upcoming JBL Pulse 5, and you can pair up to 100 speakers together, which is obviously overkill. Whereas with the Partybox Encore, you can only wirelessly pair it up to one other Partybox. Now you can either pair your Encore up to another Encore, or to a 110, a 310, or to a 710. But just keep in mind, you can only have a total of 2 Partyboxes wirelessly connected. And you also need to keep in mind that you cannot pair any of JBL's smaller Party Boost speakers to any of JBL's larger Partybox speakers. So if you've got a Boombox 3, you cannot wirelessly connect it up to an Encore. And also keep in mind, if you want to get left and right stereo sound going, you need to have 2 of the exact same speakers. So if you want to get left and right stereo sound going with an Encore, you need to have 2 Encores. And even if you have a Boombox 3 and a Boombox 2 and you pair them up, they're only going to play in sync. And also, when it comes to backwards compatibility, with JBL's Party Boost, you can only pair them up to other Party Boost speakers. You cannot pair a JBL Party Boost speaker to any of JBL's older speakers using JBL Connect Plus. So if you've got a Boombox 3, you can't pair it up to an original Boombox. And if you've got an Xtreme 3, you can't pair it up to an Xtreme 2. Now, even though this does suck, JBL Party Boost does have some performance improvements over JBL Connect Plus. Specifically, you can have a greater distance in between your 2 speakers, and also your speakers are just a lot faster to get paired up. And then with the Encore, you can't pair it up to any of JBL's older Partybox speakers, like either a Partybox 100 or Partybox 200 or Partybox 300. Now personally, I still wish that you could pair your smaller Party Boost speakers to your larger Partybox speakers, but unfortunately you just can't. Nonetheless, JBL still has a really solid speaker pairing protocol. You just press one button on each speaker, they get paired up, they start playing music, and skipping is not an issue. So if you do plan on getting multiple speakers, and if you plan on constantly pairing them together, then personally I do highly recommend JBL's Party Boost because it just works. And plus, Party Boost does have a healthy ecosystem of speakers to choose from. Whereas with the Partyboxes, this speaker pairing protocol also works very well and there's hardly any issues to it. And Partybox also has a healthy ecosystem of speakers to choose from. But personally, I just wish that you could wirelessly pair more than 2 Partyboxes together. But with all that being said, I feel that all 3 of these speakers have their own pros and cons. With the Partybox Encore, you are getting a big bang for your buck. With the Encore, you're getting a louder sound in a fairly small package. Now, the speaker doesn't sound as open as the Boombox 3, but it does have a lot of bass and it gets almost as loud. Plus, it also has that really cool look and light feature on the front. And the Encore also has that 1/4-inch input, which could come in handy either for karaoke or for hosting events. The main drawback about the Encore is that it doesn't have the best battery life and it isn't super rugged. So if you need something that's more portable and something that can hang for longer, then you might want to go with the Xtreme 3. The drawback with the Xtreme here is that this speaker doesn't get as loud as these other 2 speakers and it does lean towards a brighter sound signature. But then there's the Boombox 3. Now, objectively, this is the hardest speaker to take on the go with you here, but it is definitely still easy enough. Plus, the speaker is just as durable as the Xtreme 3, and it's way more durable than the Encore. Now, even though the Boombox 3 also leans towards a brighter sound signature, when used with the correct EQ settings, this speaker sounds more open than the Encore. But it also gets significantly louder, all while also having an impressive amount of bass. But the Boombox 3 is noticeably more expensive than these other 2 speakers. But if you want something super durable, super portable, and something that sounds good, the Boombox 3 is the way to go. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something if I'm really proud of it.